All right, buddy, Harry here. So today we're going to talk about something a little different. I was originally going to talk about God of War, but let's do that tomorrow. I have something I'm really itching on, and I really feel like there's not enough videos made about this. It's G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is a 80s franchise. Most of you recognize it as this. Yeah, Dr. Mindbender. Yeah. See the looks? Yeah, that's a hero right there. So pretty much, G.I. Joe, a real American hero, is a toy brand from the 80s that a lot of people loved. It was like the original toys that were this big. They're the ones that came up with the multi-joint thing that we all know and love nowadays. That's what their rise to fame is. So, what we're going to talk about with G.I. Joe is how it failed. And I'm going to get to that part in a minute. And let me explain to you the timeline of exactly what happened with G.I. Joe. So G.I. Joe came out in the 60s. Came out as a giant 11-inch, giant 12-inch toy that you could put military clothes on and all of this. And they pretty much summed it off of World War II. Okay, because a lot of World War II parents were buying toys for their kids at that point in time. So it came out in the 60s, and it was a massive success. It actually came out the opposite of Mattel's Barbie, and G.I. Joe was marketed as dolls for boys. Well, kids loved it. They loved the fact that you can build little war scenes and you can do all this crazy stuff. Well, after the 60s, towards the 70s, G.I. Joe started to fade out. And the reasoning why is the Vietnam War. Believe it or not, that was very unpopular. Yeah, I have to explain that. That was very unpopular. I don't care what they told you in middle school or high school. That war did not go well. Lots of people died for little to no reason. A lot of people were very upset. So because of that, war toys were out. So G.I. Joe rebranded. It became the Adventure Team. The Adventure Team was going on missions. They were discovering pharaohs. They were going in the Alps. All that kind of stuff. So they pretty much got rid of the Japanese bad guys, and they made their own bad guys, and they brought in the Adventure Team, and they started to experiment. So they were pretty much trying to find different ways to become as popular as they were in the 60s. So it became Adventure Team, became Atomic Man, became all these different brands. Eventually, at some point in time, they did a Godzilla crossover in Japan. Amazing if you look it up. It is G.I. Joe in a Godzilla suit. You can put the costume on and everything. It's great. It's worth a lot of money, though. So it came out with all these different things, and what ended up happening was that over time, eventually G.I. Joe started to phase out, because the average lifespan for any given toy is less than 5 years. It stays on the shelf, it becomes really popular, kids get bored of it, kids move on. That's pretty much what it is. So G.I. Joe ended up fading out, and they eventually ended up getting rid of it. So in the 80s, they tried to do a rebrand, and they were going to actually do something different, because, believe it or not, President Ronald Reagan actually revoked a law that allowed companies to advertise toys in cartoons, because that was actually very illegal back in the day. So the reason why we didn't really have toys of Bugs Bunny or the Flintstones or anything like that is because you weren't allowed to do that. They actually considered that manipulating children. I mean, it still is. They considered that manipulation of children and encouraging them to buy goods that they didn't really need. So there was an actual law that prevented that. So when the law got repealed, Hasbro decided to revamp G.I. Joe, but they did it with a three-prong approach. They came out with the toy. They then came out with the cartoon. Okay, so cartoon. Well, technically, let me fix that. Season 1 cartoon. So, toy, cartoon, comic book. They partnered with Marvel Comics, and they came out with a comic book to entice kids, and they put them all together. So, G.I. Joe was the concept was originally made before the law got revoked. Okay. So we have a bunch of commercials that are advertising kind of like a show, but they weren't really advertising. It was very borderline, because they were advertising the comic book, which was legal. They weren't advertising the toys, which was illegal. So when the law got revoked, they went full steam ahead and they made this cartoon. And the cartoon came out, I believe, in the early 80s. I want to say 82, but I know the comics were 82. I want to say 84, but I'm pretty sure it's that's Transformers. So more than likely it's going to be 82-ish. So they came out with the three-prong approach. So toys, comics, and cartoon. And then it went on air. It became a massive success. It was one of the first successes of the 80s for that approach. And everybody else did it. Transformers, He-Man. It's like they all followed the same pattern that Hasbro set up. And after that happened, G.I. Joe was doing extremely well during the 80s. It had a nice long run. Like, we went through multiple series of toys. They ended up making the Flag, which is like a 6-foot-long battleship. Like, G.I. Joe was like the jam back in the day. Well, they ended up dying out because of Ninja Turtles. Yeah, Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles ruined it for everybody. They were so popular, they shut everything down. Everything went under because of Ninja Turtles. Well, after that happened, they tried to revive the series as the DiC cartoon, D-I-C. And you would recognize the logo, trust me, if you've seen it, because it has a little sparkly star in the bedroom and all that kind of stuff. But they came to a horrible realization with this, because during G.I. Joe's initial run, it did okay in America. Like, it did pretty decent. It made a lot of money. But they started to become popular in other places. Yeah. So the UK became pretty popular. Japan became pretty popular in India, Brazil, Argentina. All these places. And all these places started making the toys and the comics and all of that. But there was a massive problem with that mentality. So, let's see if I have a picture of all of them. Ah, here we go. So, this is where the problem came in. Baroness. German. Okay? Dreadnoughts. Okay? Zartan and the Dreadnoughts. Australian. Storm Shadow. Japanese. Do you see a pattern here? No? So, what G.I. Joe did was they made all of the good guys American. And they made all of the bad guys foreigners. If that doesn't sound like a bad marketing decision, that's because it was a very bad marketing decision. So in this series, that's when they came to the realization that they are actually profitable overseas. And they had to rebrand and refix this error they made. Because you can't exactly market a show in Russia. Yeah, you can't exactly market a show in Russia, for example, when you made the October Guard villains. It's kind of hard to advertise in Germany when the Baroness is a villain, or in Japan when Storm Shadow is a villain. So they tried to fix that in the DiC cartoon, and they tried to make G.I. Joe into an international organization and not just a American organization. And yeah. So not only do you have the downgrade in animation, because they switched animation studios, because it was Sunbrow, which is Marvel Studios beforehand, but now you have a change in concept because they didn't want to lose their sales because all the bad guys were from the countries they were advertising in. So G.I. Joe ended up officially going under after the DiC cartoon, and the toy sales ended up drying up. And the toys officially got discontinued as of 1994. So, when 1994 hit, they tried to do something different. They tried to do Sergeant Savage and the Screaming Eagles, which is pretty much a Captain America story. But it's a phenomenal story. Like, it's literally one of the best they've ever made. And it didn't go well. Like, kids didn't like it. So, they ended up scrapping it after one episode. So, then they ended up making G.I. Joe Extreme, which also never got a DVD release, I'll mind you on that. And that one did a little bit better because they're doing the extreme thing, extreme dinosaurs, extreme Ghostbusters. It was the new in at the time. So that one did moderately okay, but not really. And then they started making other G.I. Joe shows. They made like Sigma 6. They made Renegades. They did all of this, and G.I. Joe just never caught its thunder again. Ever. All of the shows, they did okay. All the all the toys did okay. It was never a blowout anymore. Like Transformers had a revival of Beast Wars. They were hoping to repeat that, and it just never did. That's because they had to advertise an American special ops group that dealt with foreign terrorists that were threatening American, goods with the world. And believe it or not, once you got past the 80s, you start getting things like the internet, and people started reading more about how things really happened when America was involved in certain things. It didn't tend to go well. So every G.I. Joe show has flopped ever since, because this show was marketed for Americans, and they didn't know how to properly do that once it left the country. So if you ever feel interested in it, there are some actual foreign brands like Palatoy and all of these that made G.I. Joe toys. And those toys are some of the most expensive toys ever made. So if you live in like England, India, Brazil, Argentina, or anything like this, and you have G.I. Joe toys, put them on eBay. Make a buck, because there are American collectors or foreign collectors that will buy those in a heartbeat. All right, everybody, this is Harry. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And that is why G.I. Joe has failed commercially as a brand once it got past the original G.I. Joe show, Fun Sunbrow. All right, everybody, have a good day. Peace.